So Charleston, South Carolina gets voted one of the best places to live and visit pretty much every single year. 7.8 million people visited Charleston in 2024 alone. But sometimes when people move here, there are things that catch the newcomers completely off guard. So if you're thinking about moving to Charleston, there are 13 things you need to know first. Some of them, they might not bother you at all, but others could be complete deal killers. So stick around to the end, because then you'll know which things are gonna be okay for you and if Charleston's actually a good place for you to relocate. And number 13, that is the deal killer for a lot of people. It talks about the cultural difference of Charleston that most people moving here really don't even understand. All right, let's start with the truth. The humidity and the heat are brutal. It's the elephant in the room, or should I say the humidity that makes you feel like there is an elephant sitting on your chest in the middle of summer. Charleston has a humid climate. Summer temps regularly hit 80s to 90s, according to National Weather Service data. The heat season runs from late spring to early fall, May through September, sometimes even October. It's nearly half the year. And even in October, the normal high is still 78 degrees. The humidity makes it feel way hotter than the actual temp though. After 20 years of living here, the humidity is real and it's intense. If you're coming from a dry place like Colorado, you'll notice in a second as you step outside, the air feels thick. And combine that with the pollen situation we're going to cover in a minute. It starts as early as January. You're looking at a pretty challenging outdoor environment for a big chunk of the year. That 5-minute walk from your car to the restaurant, you'll look like you just did a workout. If you love being outdoors, you're going to need to change your schedule. Most locals do outdoor stuff in the early morning or in the late evening in summer. The trade-off for this weather is something that people make, but there is a trade-off for this weather, and it's something that makes people from cold places fall in love with Charleston every single year. I'm gonna get back to that at the end of this video. But for now, just know the heat's uncomfortable, and this next challenge can be downright dangerous if you are not ready. Okay, let's talk about hurricanes. If you've never lived in a hurricane zone, your first hurricane season in Charleston will be an education. The official Atlantic hurricane season runs from June 1st to November 30th every single year. And since 1851, 43 tropical cyclones, 25 hurricanes, 11 tropical storms, and 7 depressions have made landfall in the Charleston forecast area, with 18 striking Charleston County directly, according to the National Weather Service's records. The peak hurricane months are August and September. 2 major hurricanes category 3 or higher have hit since 1950. That was Hurricane Gracie in 1959 and Hurricane Hugo in 1989. Hurricane preparation becomes part of your yearly routine when you live in Charleston. You're going to need to know your evacuation zone, have a hurricane kit ready, and yeah, you'll probably evacuate at least once while living here every 5 years. Here's the money reality. Homeowners insurance is way more expensive here because of hurricanes. You're most likely going to need a separate wind and hail coverage policy on top of your normal homeowners insurance policy, and it can add thousands of dollars to your homeowners insurance every single year. And when you factor in flood insurance that we're going to discuss in just a minute, on a $600,000 home, that total cost of homeownership in Charleston goes up significantly higher than most people ever expect before they move here. If evacuating from your home once every few years is a total deal breaker, you should probably know that now. But if you can handle some seasonal stress and some preparation, the other 11 months a year make it completely worth it to live in Charleston. Now there's another cost challenge hitting Charleston right now, and it starts with how you'll even get around the city. All right, let's talk about the minimal public transportation that we have in Charleston. If you're moving from a city with great public transit, get ready for a little bit of a culture shock. Charleston is a car city. And what I mean by that is you need a car if you're going to live in Charleston and you want to get around. Charleston gets a walk score of only 40 out of 100, meaning you're really car dependent. The transit score for Charleston is even worse at 24 out of 100. Minimal transit. Bottom line, you need a car if you live in Charleston. There is a bus system called CARTA, but it's super limited compared to big city transit. No subway, no light rail, no good network. That means you have car payments, insurance costs, gas costs, repairs, and parking costs. All of these are must-have expenses that you might not have needed before moving to Charleston. Downtown Charleston itself is pretty walkable, and I do have friends who live there that don't use their car hardly at all. But if you live downtown, which we will talk about later as we talk about tourist crowds, you're dealing with 7.89 million visitors annually, competing for those same walkable streets and those same parking spots. Now, needing a car lends right into one of Charleston's other big challenges. Okay, so you accepted that you need a car to live here and to evacuate for a potential hurricane. Now let me tell you what it's like to drive that car around the city of Charleston. The average traffic jam level in Charleston is 26% according to the 2024 TomTom Traffic Index. That means drives takes 26% longer than they would without traffic. Morning rush hours got a 33% jam level. Evening rush hour is way worse at a 50% jams. Over the year, drivers in Charleston spent an extra 38 hours sitting in rush hour traffic. And during peak tourist season, the traffic gets significantly worse with tourists who don't know where they're going and they clog up all of downtown streets and bridges. And speaking of bridges, they create massive traffic backups because they're like bottlenecks. We're talking about a city that has a peninsula and surrounded by water everywhere, so there's bridges everywhere. Downtown Charleston has a narrow street area, and they just weren't built for the kind of traffic we have in our modern world. And when you're thinking about where to buy, which connects to those specific Charleston neighborhoods I'm going to mention at the end of this video, picking the right location relative to your commute can literally save you hundreds of hours a year. Okay, so traffic might slow you down or frustrate you, but this next issue can literally stop you in your tracks if you're not careful about where you buy. The next big challenge is flooding. Charleston is beautiful because it's surrounded by water, but Charleston floods because it's surrounded by water. You can't have one without the other. Sea level in Charleston has risen 13 inches over the past 100 years, according to the NOAA tide data. Charleston gets 3 types of flooding: high tide flooding, storm flooding from hurricanes, and heavy rain flooding when it gets overwhelmed. This is, I can't even get in my car to go anywhere type of flooding. It's downtown streets that are literally rivers and streams. And if you're one of those folks that's drawn to Charleston's beautiful historic homes, which we'll discuss later in this video when we cover preservation restrictions, many of those properties are in the historic district and most are flood-prone areas with the strictest renovation rules on top of that. Now, when I'm showing houses to people, flood zones are one of the first things we talk about. Some areas flood regularly, multiple times per month during high tides. Other areas almost never flood in Charleston. And when you're trying to decide between 2 neighborhoods, knowing which specific communities rarely flood becomes a major factor in your decision on which one to buy. Flood insurance is expensive, and sometimes it can be really expensive. We're talking about $1,200 a year and up to $10,000 a year. The good news is Charleston's taking this seriously. The city's brought in experts from other countries to find solutions to the flooding problems. Flooding can affect where you live, but this next thing might affect whether you can even afford to live in Charleston in the first place. Next up is a limited job market in Charleston. Charleston's economy is growing. We've seen 3.2% job growth in the last 12 months, but it's not growing at the same rate in every field. The Charleston area's got a 455,000 worker force with a 4.2% unemployment rate as of August 2025, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data. If you work in finance, healthcare, hospitality, or professional services, Charleston has a growing job market. But when you factor in that $600,000 median home price we're about to discuss in a minute, along with extra insurance costs from hurricanes and flooding we covered earlier, your salary needs to stretch a lot further in Charleston than you might have originally expected. Now, if you're in a specialized tech or niche field, the market can be tough and it can even be limited. Lock down your job before you commit to moving to Charleston. Average pay is $33 per hour. That's about $61,000 a year for full time. And that needs to line up with Charleston's home costs. If you're planning to job hunt after you get here, I'd strongly suggest having 6 months at least of expenses saved up. Now we're going to talk about the biggest expense you're going to face when you move to Charleston. Okay, let's talk about housing. and how much it costs. The middle home price in Charleston is $600,000 as of September 2025, according to official Redfin data. Charleston's middle home price is 38% higher than the country's average price, and that is a price per square foot of $337 per foot, which went up 4.8% year over year. The market's really competitive. Homes get about one offer on average. You have 236 homes that sold in September 2025, which is up 17% from last September. And when you're trying to make all the numbers work, remember the average wage is $33 an hour that we just discussed. But you have to combine that with even another cost we're going to talk about, which is pest control. And every expense starts to add up quickly, and it adds on to this big price point. Price per square foot is still going up at about 5% a year, telling you that the Charleston real estate market keeps getting more and more valuable even as prices slow down. If you're coming from New York or San Francisco, Charleston might feel like a big deal. But if you're coming from other parts of the country like the Midwest, you could have sticker shock on the prices of homes in Charleston. There are still less expensive spots in Greater Charleston if you know where to look. Think of Somerville, Hanahan, Johns Island, and maybe Goose Creek. High home costs are a challenge, but the next challenge we're going to talk about in a moment is something that happens when you step outside. Next up, let's talk about allergens and pollen. If you have allergies, Charleston's going to test them. If you don't have allergies yet, Charleston might give them to you. Pollen in Charleston gets measured on a scale of 1 to 12. As of October 16, 2025, Charleston's low country count was a moderate 4 to 6. Main tree pollens are oak, hickory, and sycamore. Allergy season often begins in February, when the tree pollen emerges earliest in the low country. That's way earlier than most parts of the country. Charleston's mild weather means different types of pollen are around just about all of the year. I'm talking thick yellow coating all over your car that looks like somebody spray painted it with a coat of yellow spray paint. You have visible clouds of pollen in the spring that you can actually see in the air. Even folks who've never had allergies before moving to Charleston will sometimes feel that nasal congestion just from being in the air in Charleston in the spring. And if you're thinking about these beautiful Charleston outdoor activities that draw tourists in, which we'll discuss when we get to the 7.89 million annual visitors that come to Charleston, enjoying them as a resident means constantly managing seasonal challenge. Now, the positive side of Charleston is you have all these outdoor activities, but that also draws in tourists, and we're going to talk about them in just a minute. But residents are constantly managing seasonal challenges. There are products like saline nasal spray that become must-haves for being outside during peak pollen months. And it really only lasts about 30 days, the peak season of pollen. During high pollen days, you're going to want to keep your windows closed and run your AC with a good filter. Now, pollen's not the only thing in Charleston that might bother you during the warmer months. Next up are mosquitoes and flying pests. Charleston's got 3 seasons: hurricane season, pollen season, and then mosquito season. Unfortunately, they all kind of overlap. Charleston's high humidity and warm temps create perfect conditions for mosquitoes. Coastal and marsh areas provide tons of standing water. Mosquito season is typically from April through October, and termites love Charleston's humid weather too. Evening outdoor activities from April through October mean that you're probably going to wear bug spray. If you're considering one of those beautiful historic Charleston homes we'll discuss later, which often have older construction and even more entry points, termite inspections become more critical during the buying process. Charleston mosquitoes can carry diseases, so this isn't just about comfort, it's also about your health. I've lived here 20 years and I still won't sit on my deck in the evening during a summer day without bug spray. But we do have a screened porch, so that becomes another expense and a must-have. You learn to keep no gnat spray in your car and in your house and maybe even in your pocket. So you have Charleston's humid weather. It's perfect for those mosquitoes and for termites. Most homeowners get year-round termite checks and treatments. It's not if you'll deal with termites, it's when. Most Charleston residents will tell you pests and pollen are minor annoyances compared to the next challenge we're going to talk about. Next up, we've got tourist crowds. Charleston welcomed 7.8 million visitors in 2024. The entire Charleston area has only got around 870,000 residents. So that's nearly 10 tourists for every 1 resident last year. That created a record $14 billion in money coming into Charleston, according to the College of Charleston tourism data. Tourism makes up roughly 23.5% of all sales in the Charleston area. Peak seasons for tourists are spring, March through May, and fall, September through November, because these are the best weather months. During peak seasons, popular restaurants that locals want to eat at are completely booked, and you might have to call 30 days in advance just to get a reservation. Also, parking downtown becomes nearly impossible. And remember that traffic congestion we talked about earlier with the 26% average jam level? During tourist season, in downtown, it gets dramatically worse, especially around those historic areas we'll discuss in a minute, where streets weren't designed for modern traffic volume or even cars, because Charleston originally had horse-drawn carriages. I genuinely love that Charleston is such a hot spot. But if you're looking at schools for your kids, living in the suburbs where tourist impact is minimal becomes even more attractive when you realize that the best public school zones tend to be outside the heavy tourist areas anyway. There are times when I personally completely avoid downtown because I know it's going to be overrun by tourists. If you're someone who wants peace, quiet, and small town vibes year-round, living downtown, it might not be for you. But if you live in the suburbs, Mount Pleasant, Somerville, Johns Island, Daniel Island, you can enjoy Charleston's charm and downtown whenever you want without having to deal with those tourists every single day. Those tourism dollars help keep our property taxes lower. Some Charleston areas feel like tourist spots year-round. Others feel like hidden local secrets. Tourists come and go, but if you're thinking of buying one of Charleston's beautiful old homes, you'll deal with something that is more permanent. Okay, we're here at historic preservation restrictions, which are a real deal if you buy a historic home downtown Charleston or in Mount Pleasant's Old Village Historic District. Charleston's got the oldest preservation rules in the United States. They were created in 1931. That's a huge point of pride for our city, but it's also a potential headache if you buy one of these homes. Charleston's Board of Architectural Review, the BAR, was created in 1931 as well. It's the first of its kind in the entire country, according to the City of Charleston's records. The BAR controls all visible outside work in Charleston's historic areas. You're going to need approval for a new building, for changes, for fixes, for tearing down, painting, even yard work, signs, and repairs. If you buy an old home in one of Charleston's historic areas, you can't just decide to paint your house a different color, or to replace windows with a modern one, or to add solar panels. You need BAR approval, and in a lot of cases, they're not going to give it to you. And remember those flooding issues we discussed earlier? Many of these historic homes are in the most flood zone prone areas. So if you're dealing with both renovation restrictions and ongoing water management challenges, downtown could be a challenge. They've got specific rules that you have to meet, the BAR does, and they can say no if you want to make a change. Minor changes can sometimes be reviewed by staff pretty quickly, maybe in a few weeks, but major projects need a full board review, and the BAR only meets once a month, which can push your timeline back significantly, especially if you're trying to coordinate with school schedules or other priorities that you have. I've seen projects delayed 6 months or more because the BAR continues to decline the request. This isn't a problem if you're buying a new build in a newer subdivision in areas that are outside the historic districts. You just got to know which areas fall under the restrictions and which ones don't. Old building rules restrict how you can change your home, but this next thing restricts access to something critical if you have children. Another challenge with the Charleston area is the education system. Charleston's got a large school system with over 50 elementary schools in the area. The school quality varies big time from area to area. The Charleston area shows high education levels overall. 90.8% of residents have a high school diploma or higher, according to Charleston Regional Development Alliance data. Charleston's home to several colleges, including the College of Charleston and Charleston Southern University. Now, as a realtor, I can't give you opinions on specific schools, but school districts are often the number one thing that decides which areas a family chooses to live in. Some schools in Charleston have amazing ratings and strong reputations. Other areas struggle with resources and performance. And when you're making this decision, remember that $600,000 median home price we covered earlier. Homes in the top rated school zones often command 10% to 20% premium over that already high median price. The quality is not the same across everywhere in the area when it comes to schools. Here's what I tell every family with school-age kids. Use greatschools.org as one tool. Visit schools in person if you can. Talk to parents who have kids currently in the schools that you're considering. That's what we did. Join local Facebook groups for the area that you're considering and ask the moms or the dads in those groups what they think. A lot of families pick private schools in Charleston, but private school tuition typically runs $10,000 a year to $20,000 a year per child, depending on the school and the grade. If you have children that are school age, make school research a top priority. Living in the right school zone can change your kids' educational path and, in turn, their future. Education shapes your children's future and their daily life. But the final thing we're going to talk about shapes your own daily life in ways that catch every newcomer completely off guard more than anything else we've discussed. The last thing we're going to talk about is the conservative culture in Charleston, and it's a big one. Charleston's changing, but it's still basically a southern city with over 300 years of deep history. That history shapes the culture here in ways that aren't obvious to people when they're visiting as a tourist. Charleston's commitment to keeping tradition is clear, and it has one of the oldest preservation societies in the country. Now, Charleston is seeing major growth from big cities, including Washington, D.C., New York, New Jersey, and Boston, according to Redfin data. And Charleston is more progressive and modern than a lot of the rest of the South Carolina cities, but it's still more conservative and traditional than most big cities that people are moving from. Look, the pace of life here in Charleston is just slower than it is in the Northeast. And while some people find that charming, others can find it frustrating. Traditional Southern values are still around. Being polite, being formal, and having strong religious influence is part of the community life for many people in Charleston. Charleston is known for its legendary Southern hospitality, and it's real. But it's a place where tradition does matter, where history gets kept and honored, and where change happens a little more slowly than you might expect in the North. I moved here from Michigan 20 years ago, and it was a cultural adjustment for me. I had to drive slower. Things just move different here. Social rules are different. Business culture has got its own rhythm, and people even talk slower in the South. Here's the thing, after 20 years, I've come to really appreciate the slower pace. I enjoy driving slower. Yesterday, I was driving 5 miles an hour under the speed limit, and it was driving my brother insane. But I hadn't even noticed. You kind of adjust to a slower pace of life, and I happen to love it. But you have to know what's coming because it is a culture shock for some people who move from other areas. The big wave from new residents all over the country is changing Charleston's culture. You can see in the restaurants we have and the new businesses that are opening, people are changing their attitudes a little bit at a time. The city's becoming more modern while still keeping that Southern character. My advice is this: Charleston's not a better place or a worse place than others culturally. It's just different. The question you need to answer is whether Charleston's particular mix of traditional Southern culture and modern change fits your values and what you want for your lifestyle. If you value charm, grace, and traditions of the Old South while appreciating Charleston's growth and diversity, you're probably going to love it here. But if, on the other hand, you're looking for big city, progressive culture, fast pace, people that cut other people off when they're driving, Charleston might not be right for you. And that's totally okay. The best way to figure out if Charleston's culture works for you is visit it multiple times and during different seasons and spend time in different areas of Charleston. Okay, we've covered all 13 challenges. Now let's bring it all together as we wrap up. After looking at those 13 challenges, here's the bottom line. Charleston is not for everyone, and that is completely fine. But if you can handle the 13 challenges that we just talked about, you will absolutely love this city. The people who move to Charleston with eyes wide open, who pick the right neighborhood for their priorities, are the ones who never want to leave and just are so endeared to this wonderful city. If you're thinking seriously about making the move, don't wait. The Charleston market's competitive right now, and the best neighborhoods and the top school zones are really getting snatched up fast. My team and I help people move to Charleston and make this decision every single day. If you have questions, just email us, sales@mattoneilteam.com. Let's find the right Charleston neighborhood before someone else finds the perfect house that you wanted. And hey, if you found this video helpful, make sure you hit subscribe because we post videos every week about Charleston real estate and what it's like to live here. Hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Now, knowing these 13 challenges is critical, but here's the thing. If you could handle all 13 of these and still pick the wrong neighborhood, you could turn your dream home into a nightmare real fast. In this next video, I'm breaking down the 5 biggest mistakes people make when choosing where to live in Charleston. Click that video popping up right now, and I'll see you there.